Yep.
Okay.
Great thing. Let me just get that clicked. Thank you. I'd like to call this special workshop meeting of the Jerome Town Council conducted via Zoom on Thursday, September 9th, now at 4:31 PM to order. And Candace, if you would please call the roll.
Mayor Dillenberg,
Present.
Vice Mayor Worth is not here yet. Ms. Harvey,
Here.
Hey,
Ms. Moore,
I'm here.
Ms. Barber.
Present.
great. Thank you all for being here and taking time for this, and I appreciate our members of the public participating as well. I'd like to move to our major item that brought us all together, water and sewage rates, to continue the discussion, see what changes we want to make. I thought we had a great meeting in August. And Jane, I'd like to turn it over to you, if you don't mind. And I wanted to go on record just commending you for the wonderful piece you wrote in the newsletter that came out the other day. Thank you so very much.
Thanks. I don't know where to start, honestly. I think maybe, should we hear from Dan
That's fine with me. Say, I see some yes. heads.
or Candace on the summary that we have here?
Yeah, the summary is great. Thank you, Candace.
And then I'll make
Yeah.
some comments.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll just go through the summary that I did here. And Mandy just texted me. She's trying to get on and keeps getting kicked off for some reason, so.
All right.
On August 23rd, we talked about switching to volumetric rates in two phases. First, commercial rates as of January 1st, 2022. And in order to do that, we need to adopt a resolution to set those rates by December 1st. Apartments with more than 4 units, we're talking about would be considered commercial for billing purposes, and vineyards would be billed at commercial rates. And then phase 2 would be residential rates. We still have some bugs to work out with that. And we talked about using the experience gained from the switch for commercial to put in our best practices for the switch to for residential users. Right now, out-of-town users would be charged at a higher rate, and they would continue to be charged at a higher rate under the new structure. Some of the things we need to think about are the fact that residential users tend to use water for landscaping that doesn't enter the sewer system. And right now we bill sewer based on water gallons used. So we're thinking about different ways to do that. And I did include something that John Knight found from San Luis Obispo in my memo. Maybe this is Mandy, hold on. Yes.
Yay.
Wait till she gets fully on here.
Yep.
All right. Hi, Mandy. Glad you.
Hey, Mandy, welcome.
Hi, sorry, it just keeps kicking me off when I try to do it on the Wi-Fi, so I had to go back to the phone connection.
Okay. I was just going over my memo, which I'm sure you've seen.
Yes,
I'm down to the residential rates and the issues that we need to consider as we move forward. One of which is use of water for landscaping. And as I was saying, San Luis Obispo establishes a sewer cap for billing sewer based on an average of winter water usage, which is an interesting concept that we might want to explore.
Okay.
And then the other one is multiple residences being served by a single meter. And I think we've got, I asked Kristen to give me a list and she did, and my life has been crazy. I think it's about 11, something like that. And we talked about making that switch for residential use within the next 2 years after we see how it's working and figure out those issues. We also talked about a line maintenance charge to be added based on the distance from the water meter to the point where water enters the town. So a base distance would be established where that charge would be either minimal or nothing. And after that, there'd be an added distance for each 1,000 feet or part thereof. And I've got staff working right now to come up with measurements so we know really what we're talking about with that. We talked about scenario 1B, which was an 8,000 gallon usage in the base rate. And I added that. And then just yesterday, I also sent you scenario 1A, which is a lower base rate and with no minimum gallons of usage. That would be lower for people that don't use 8,000 gallons. They wouldn't have to pay a larger base rate. So anyway, that's my summary. And if you want to hear from Dan next.
Yes, I would.
Yeah,
Unless
I
there's
have
any
just-
questions, any council members have any questions of Candace at the moment? If not, Dan, please.
Yeah,
I'm
just a
sorry,
few-
Dr. Mayor, I just want a quick clarification from Candace if possible.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, Mandy? It broke up there.
It's okay. I just wanted a quick clarification. When you say there's 11 shared meters, is that 11 units sharing one or 11 meters that have more than one unit on it?
7 properties with more than 1 meter. It's in Kristen, I see you're on
Okay,
here.
thank
Can
you.
Verify that because that was just off the top of my head from my memory that you gave me. Maybe she can't get on the microphone there.
Okay, she can, if you can,
Okay,
Thanks. Thank you so much.
okay.
yes, she just went on the chat and she's going to get her
Okay.
info.
All right.
Thanks, Kristen. Please, Dan.
Sure. I just have a few comments I'd like to make to the council, if you don't mind. Town of Jerome has a rate structure in place right now that, while it is not unprecedented, some other communities have it. It's basically outdated in that it charges a fixed charge for both water and sewer service based on the type of business or the perceived number of customers living in a certain residence. There are inherent problems and issues with a system like this. The most important one being the fact that it puts the town in a situation where you have to sort of monitor not only what type of business is operating, but also how many people are living in a certain residence. And so what many cities have done is they have moved beyond systems like that. These kind of rates used to be popular about 30, 40, 50 years ago. They've moved to a system where you begin to charge per 1,000 gallons for the water actually used by each customer. In other words, a residential customer pays a rate per 1,000 gallons. Doesn't matter how many people are in the house. All that matters is how much water goes through. All that matters is how much water goes through the meter.
I'm gonna work on a
And
policy.
so-
John, will you mute yourself?
John, will you please mute yourself?
I just muted him.
Thank you.
Okay, the dilemma the town faces is the fact that whenever you fundamentally change the way you charge for a service, you inevitably create what we like to call winners and losers. What happens is some people will find themselves paying less under the new system than they paid under the old system. Perhaps they were paying $40 a month under the old system, but they only use a couple thousand gallons a month, and they might end up paying less under the new system of per 1,000 gallon usage. Other people might end up paying more. The problem is that you're more likely to hear from the people who perceive themselves as paying more as a result of the new system than the people who are paying less. So you have to be prepared to accept the fact that when you change the billing system, you're going to impact all your users differently based on how much water they use and what type of water they use. That is one of the big inherent challenges of going to this new system. That's why, in my opinion, I think it is a very prudent move for the town to do it a little bit at a time. Do it for the commercial customers first, kind of see how it goes, and then do it for the residential customers at a defined later date. The other thing, keep in mind, is that we had to make a series of assumptions about how people would use water once they begin getting charged on a per 1,000 gallon basis. I like to think that my ability to predict how people are going to use water is pretty good, but it's not necessarily perfect. So as you put this new system into place, you need to very carefully monitor how people are using water and what your revenue levels are, and be prepared to make adjustments as necessary. People may cut back their usage more than you expect. They may cut back their usage a little less than you expect. Now, the last thing I'd like to talk about real briefly is the sewer side. On the sewer side, the idea was brought up of charging based on a winter average. That is a system that's becoming increasingly popular around the country. The idea behind a winter average is fairly simple. If you're a residential customer, you use different amounts of water at different points of the year. In the winter months, you only use whatever water is inside your house. In other words, in most climates, you don't water your lawn in December or January. You don't use water outdoors in December or January. But in June, you're going to use a lot of water outdoors. So the idea of a winter average is you take the usage in December, January, and February, the winter months, and that becomes a cap on the amount of usage, because let's assume that all that water goes back into your sewer system. In other words, people, you probably don't flush the toilet any more in June than you do in December, but you water your lawn a lot more. And so you cap your usage for sewer charges at the amount that you use in the winter months. And any amount that you use in June or July or the other summer months that exceeds that cap, you assume goes back into, does not go back into the sewer system. Again, it's not a perfect system. The reason is that there's no such thing as a sewer meter. So you have to estimate how people put sewage into the system. It's a very good system, but it's not a perfect system. And one of the perceived shortfalls of a winter average is that in states like Arizona and Texas, where I'm from, the weather can be very moderate in the winter months. And so it's possible people might actually use water outdoors in December and January. Now, winter averages are ideal for a place like Green Bay, Wisconsin, where it's just inconceivable somebody's going to water their lawn in January in Green Bay. But they may do it in Arizona, and they may do it in Texas. So the system is not perfect, but it's pretty good. It's as good as it gets, put it that way. So if a winter average is the way you go, as long as your billing system has the ability to calculate a winter average, and it will calculate an individual winter average for every user. Every user's winter average will be different because a person with a 4-person household will have a higher winter average than a 1-person household. And most billing systems have the ability to calculate winter averages. It's not really that hard to do. As long as you can do that, then I think it's something that would be very prudent for you to consider in the future. So
Great.
Those are really all the remarks I've got. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you very much, Dan. Jane, let's get to you. That sounds like an interesting concept, that winter average. So Jane, please, do you have any? You're
Yes.
muted, Jane, I think.
Yeah.
No? There you go.
One exception I could think of for that scenario is perhaps a vacation rental. Depending
Oh.
on when they have a lot of people, they may have a lot of people at times that are different than people watering outside.
Okay.
So
the-
that might
typically-
be a tough one.
Well, if a
Um,
vacation rental property is considered a commercial property, you would not do winter averages for commercial properties. You bill based on all usage for a commercial property. The reason being that all the water used by a commercial is considered to be used for its business and indoors. And
Yeah.
commercial businesses, typically those that have large yards or campus type environments, would have an irrigation meter to water their lawn outdoors, and that an irrigation meter would not have any sewer usage. So that's one way of getting around that particular issue.
Thank you.
So are you saying that vacation rentals can be billed as a commercial use?
Absolutely. It's a business. You
Not
get
in
income.
State of
Sure, in
Arizona.
Arizona.
Sorry,
Arizona.
not in Arizona.
Yeah.
So-
Arizona, Dan, so Arizona has, I'll just say a law, I'll leave it at that won't allow us to treat short-term rentals any differently than long-term residential rentals. So
No, that's unfortunate because
It is.
there's a very big distinction.
Very unfortunate.
extremely, we're all working hard to get that fixed, but it's been a problem.
Sage?
So,
Oh, sorry.
Another,
Just real quick. I know that the newest B&B in this town had 16 people in it on Saturday.
Well, a B&B should be considered to be a commercial entity, shouldn't it?
Any short-term rental is considered residential per state law.
But a B&B is a hotel.
Yeah, we know that.
Not according to Doug Ducey.
No, Governor Ducey, yeah, somebody, don't get us started.
Yeah, Sedona is having major
Don't get us
problems.
started.
It's getting
Well,
like,
I mean, if you had a Holiday Inn there, would that be under that
oh,
law?
no, a Holiday Inn is a business, but if it's a residential house that's being used for short-term rental, it's considered residential use.
Well, that's just arbitrary. Yeah.
We
terrible.
don't like it.
Yes.
Well, that's unfortunate because that's going to be an issue for a winter average in your town, unfortunately.
Right.
If those B&Bs and short-term rentals are a significant portion of your customer base, then that would be a pretty powerful argument to not implement a winter average and to just bill by gallonage.
Well, according to Kristen on the chats, 12 residential zone properties have multiple accounts and households on a single meter. I'm sorry, that's a different issue altogether, but I don't know offhand how many B&B, but I bet it's approaching 20 probably at this point, at least.
At
Candace?
least.
At
It's
least.
more than that, I
It's
guarantee
more
you.
than that. Yeah,
Sorry, I did just a general search and some basic statistics right before league conference. And what I came up with as an estimate is that 25 to 30% of our residential units are short-term rentals.
If it's that percentage, that's a what that would mean essentially is that your residential users would be subsidizing your short-term rental units, because you'd have to set the volumetric rate higher because you have a lower number of units that you're billing for, and that means your residential customers would pay a disproportionate amount. That's a powerful argument against the winter average.
I see John, you got your hand up.
You're muted, John.
You're muted, John. Still muted. You're still
Unmute.
muted. There
Okay,
you go.
stand by. Okay, sorry about that. Okay. So I think in reference to what Mandy said about the number of units that are Airbnb, I think we should get John Knight to do a very detailed and definitive study of that, because I find it hard to believe if it's 30 or 40%, we're talking, perhaps as many as 80 to 100 vacation rentals. And I don't believe that's the case. So I think it's important that the town do a serious analysis of that.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments here? I mean, this is. I don't
I
see.
do. I thought maybe Mandy might want to voice how she came on this. She did research, I believe. Are you there, Mandy?
I am. I just looked up online all the different possible types of platforms to list a vacation rental. Made sure that I wasn't overlapping, like double counting something. And then, based on some previous data, which is a little bit old, I won't disagree, it's a little bit old. The last time that a count of residential units in Jerome was done was 2010, and there were 117 residential units, like individual residential units. I'm not talking about how many people live in it or building wise, but 117 separate household units. And I just did the math,
Thank you. So
And
where
what
are-
you said was 25 to 30% of those are vacation rentals,
Correct.
right? Because
And
I think
not
that's
all,
pretty-
not necessarily all the time. Sometimes they are and sometimes they aren't, like the shared economy thing is not really our concern, but I do count them as short-term rentals if they are available as a short-term rental at any point.
Okay, Sage?
Sorry, I'm counting the ones that I know off the top of my head. I wasn't raising my.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Sorry.
I do have my hand raised. I wanted to clarify. Thank you,
yes.
Mandy, for pointing out 117 residential units. Because John, his number of vacation rentals was a little high for how many residential units we have. But if you look at 117 residential units, that 20 to 30% of them are vacation rentals. That is pretty powerful for how many units were available or are still available. Thank you. I was just trying to clarify that.
Thanks, Anna. Okay,
A couple of comments I have. I did some math. And one example I had, since we're talking mostly about commercial rates at the moment. I took, let's see, I think it was a bar only, which was paying $52 and some change per month. And if they were switched to, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, I think the base rate then would be $46 a month for commercial. And let's say, for instance, that business is using 20,000 gallons a month. Just average every month. Then, let's see, they were paying approximately, and I did rounding off, $624 a year for water. And they would then be paying about $1,000 and a little over $1,000 a year then. So that's a pretty good size increase for that particular business. And that's just a small business not using a whole lot of water. And I would think a bar washing glasses and things like that might be using 20,000 a month. And I don't know if anyone else has comments about that. And then, well, do you want to just do one question at a time? Because I have a couple more comments. So does that sound about right to you from doing the math?
If you establish a non-residential rate of $20 minimum charge and $3.25 per 1,000 gallons, yes, your number is about right. Couple of things to keep in mind, however. One, the most important one being that what they're paying right now is not necessarily, if they're really using 20,000 gallons a month, what they've been paying for the last several years is far below what it has cost the city to serve them. And so they've been getting an unfairly low rate for many years. And now this rate will correct that. Now, of course, that's not going to be very easy for them to convince them of that. All the business is going to see is their bill was $700, now it's $1,000, and that's a big increase. The problem was it was $700, it shouldn't have been $700. It should have been a lot more than that, and that's a flaw in the old system. But it's like I said, every business is going to be impacted differently based on how much water they use. Some are going to benefit, some are going to get hit.
Right. Well, and another question I had, so if we implement this and a year later, it's negatively impacting people, do we have another hearing and discuss it and see how far below or how close we are to reaching the amount of money we need?
Absolutely. The council can adjust its rates anytime it wants.
Do we need to do a hearing though?
Yes, you'd have to go through the whole process, public hearing and then adjustment. Keep one thing very important in mind. Like I keep saying, everybody will be impacted differently. The people who benefit are not going to say anything. They're just going to kind of shrug their shoulders and say whatever. The people who get hurt are going to complain about it. And so you're going to hear from the people who get unfairly hit or get hit as a result of it. And so keep in mind the perspective when you get that angry phone call from the bar owner that says my bill's gone way up. You know, there's a lot of people out there who have benefited who aren't going to bother calling you up and saying, thank you very much for lowering my rate. They're not going to do that. And secondly, if a bar owner uses 20,000 gallons a month, he ought to be paying a heck of a lot more than what he's paying right now. He just should be, because you're losing a lot of money by serving that bar owner. And yeah, it's cold comfort to him to know that because his bill is going up, but it's still fair, just, and reasonable for the town to do it.
I guess I just have a really hard time sometimes thinking about when we all benefit from having the water equally, it costs the same amount of money to run a water line to someone's house, that we then are depending on the sale of water as a commodity to make up for the lower base rates.
That No.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
I believe so. I mean, water is a product, like a McDonald's hamburger or a gallon.
I
of
don't
gas or
agree.
anything else.
I don't
Uh-huh.
agree with that. So
I don't agree with that either. Water is life and it should be free to everyone as far as I'm concerned, but
a certain amount.
Well, I mean, food is essential too. Gasoline is essential. People can't survive without gasoline. People can't survive without electricity. I mean, commodities cost money to produce, and there's nothing unreasonable about asking somebody to contribute some of their income to fund those essential parts of life. I mean, that's what life is all about.
Jack, you're muted. Mayor, you're
I
muted.
see John. Yes, thank you. I see John has his hand up. John?
Okay, am I unmuted?
Yes,
Yes.
Okay, I think, just in terms of terminology here, I think we can consider it to be a resource, but resources still cost money, and it costs the town a certain amount of money to provide these, this volume of water to people. And so whether we call it a resource or commodity, I think in our case, we want to call it a resource, and we want to say, we're trying to get across is that we want people to pay for what they get. And in the case of an Airbnb that's running, 16 people in one day, well, they're going to use a heck of a lot of water. And with Dan's proposed system, those people are going to have to pay for that water because it's going to make their meter run like crazy. So it's not like with 16 people in there, they're getting away with murder. They're paying for every gallon that they get.
Thank you. I see Mandy has her hand up.
Yeah, I guess on this particular topic, as far as cost of usage, the more usage the more water you run out of your tap, the more often you flush your toilet into the sewer system, the more wear and tear happens on the infrastructure. And that's really where I see the difference in the rates being. It's not the water itself as a product from where, as the product, it's more about the more you use, the more wear and tear on the infrastructure, the more maintenance we have to do, the more repair, the more replacement, that kind of thing. And that's really what we're trying to do here, right? Is cover our costs, which we're not doing right now.
Yes. Thank you.
So that's kind of how I see it. I had another question. I can't remember it now. So I'll come back with it.
Okay, take your hand down and put it back up when you're ready. Jane?
That's true of the sewer system, but not necessarily the water system, because we're not pumping water out of an aquifer. The water's coming through the pipes no matter what. And in some respects, I mean, even with sewer system, at times, it's better to have that water flowing through, not necessarily what goes along with the water, but
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm trying, thanks, Jane. And Dan, from my perspective, I just recognizing that we're sort of hand hogtied that we can't do much with the Airbnbs. I want to get a sense, I'd like to get a sense, what is the best approach that we can do to maximize the fairness in charging the Airbnb for the water uses that they use? You know, we can't do one, but what can we do? And I think that's something we need to explore as part of this solution. You know, maybe not put them under the, they can be done simultaneously with the commercial properties, but not called commercial properties because we're not allowed to call them commercial properties, but maybe based on usage or something. I'm trying to figure that out.
Yeah, I understand your point. There's a couple of different options you could take. One option is that you could just tell everybody they're gonna, first of all, this doesn't affect water at all, okay? The Airbnb will pay for every 1,000 gallons of water that they use. What it affects is the sewer, because a winter average system restricts sewer charges. It doesn't restrict water charges. Now, if you perceive that the Airbnb is a significant portion of your customer base, that does unquestionably undermine or cast doubt on the fairness of the winter average system.
Right.
So one alternative is that you set a system where you just say, we're going to charge sewer charges on 100% of water usage. We don't care whether it goes into the system or not, because there are too many customers here where we can't use a winter average to calculate it any better. Now, people will say as a result of that, well, then I'm paying sewer charges on water that's going onto my lawn. So another alternative is that you could charge sewer charges on, say, 75% of your water usage. You just arbitrarily say, well, we're going to assume that 25% of your water doesn't go back into the sewer system. And so we're only going to charge on 75%. None of these systems are perfect. That's because there's no such thing as a sewer meter. So we can never tell for sure how much sewage a residential or a business is contributing. All we can do is estimate it. So
Yeah.
the options are, what I would suggest, the most reasonable option initially is to do 100% of sewer usage, of water usage, and then see what happens over the next year or two. See how usage changes, see how your revenue changes. And maybe after you start getting some real data in based on the new system, then you can adjust accordingly. There's going to be some growing pains here. You know, you're radically revising your system, and it's gonna have a lot of impacts. People are going to change. It's sort of like when the government writes a new tax law. You know, they write this brand new tax law, they suddenly change all the rules, and they assume people are going to react in a certain manner. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. And after a year or two, they realize that they are doing some things and they're not doing other things. And so they amend their tax law accordingly. And that's where I think you're going with this new rate plan.
I think what you're suggesting is very reasonable. Mandy, you got your hand up?
Yes, I remembered my question and then I have a clarification. So my question is, you know, right now we're looking at commercial exclusive, right? So my question is, because yes, as Jane pointed out, some businesses are going to go up really dramatically. If there is a way to titrate that up over X amount of time, like over 6 months or 12 month period, to get to the full rate, so it's not quite the initial shock to the system, so that business owners know that, okay, by the end of this 12-month cycle, I'm going to be at the rate I'm supposed to be at, and I'll be paying a certain percentage to get up to that rate over the course of a year. So that's question. And then clarification, we're considering doing commercial rates first and then residential rates a year or two down the road, correct? So, it's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, that commercial sewer rates are going to be based on water usage for commercial. Our concern is residential usage with this, what we've talked about, you know, where's the options on how to figure out the sewer price because there are no sewer meters. Well, since we're not going to do it for at least a year, is there a way to track the sewer usage for a year on residential properties? And then their sewer rate is an average of that snapshot year, a monthly average of that full snapshot year, because that would cover us over all the months and all the ups and downs of varying things. So those are my questions. Thank you.
I would say that they're probably, what you'd be doing is you'd essentially be converting your billing system to a winter average based system, but you wouldn't actually be implementing the bills yet. And you'd be getting a year of background or test data by which you could use to further refine the rates. Candace, do you think that's possible?
I think she said monitoring sewer usage, but as you said, we don't have sewer meters, so there's
Right.
no way to monitor sewer. We've been monitoring water usage for years, but we can't monitor sewer usage.
Yeah,
Total-
what you would do is you would monitor the water usage, and the winter average is based on water usage.
And we have
So
that
you
data
can-
already, yes.
Mhm.
That's, yeah. Jane?
I can give an example from my own water bill that I have 4 months out of the year that I'm under 5,000 gallons a month usage. And then the other, let's see, 4 months. And then 8 months where I average around 20,000 gallons a month.
Mhm. So a winter average would be very beneficial to a user with your profile, because you obviously have a lot of non-water usage that does not go into the sewer system.
Right.
You're the person winter averages were designed to benefit.
And yeah, well, I guess we could figure out how many there are. So in other words, I guess you could look at another place that uses 20,000 gallons a month or something like that. Then rather than the up and down like I have, would that work? I mean, how would you do that though? How would you separate those out?
I guess maybe Jane, my question was, or suggestion was that instead of a 3-month usage of water to determine the sewer rate, we take a 12-month snapshot to determine the sewer rate. So it is spread over the course of the ups and downs over the course of a year.
But we
And
can't
that way we're
measure
not
sewer
having to do a
use. We can
percentage.
measure total water use. We don't have meters for sewers. It would have to be
Right,
the
but
total water use.
The winter average is based, the winter average that Dan explained is like December, January, February water usage determines the sewer price, correct?
Yes,
So what if we did a full calendar year of water usage to determine the sewer price for a residential use?
in essence, really, it's no different than if we just bill them monthly, but for their water usage for sewer. Because just averaging it out then over the course of the year rather than the ups and downs, but it's still going to come out to the same amount.
Right.
Okay,
If you look at the rate plan, the recommendation for a volume-based sewer rate was for residential customers, a minimum charge of $13.50 a month and a volumetric rate of $3.75 per 1,000 gallons. That's based on billing 100% of water usage to those customers. If you were to implement a winter average, I would estimate that the volume rate would probably go up to about $5 to $5.50. Because what's happening is, if you use a winter average, you have fewer billing units. You have, say, 100 million gallons of water. But if you're using a winter average, then you're excluding 30 to 40 million gallons of water because that's considered to be non-sewer usage. And so you have fewer billing units, so your volume rate has to go up. So we could do it, we could calculate a winter average, but I can tell you, I can virtually guarantee you that it will be somewhere between $5 and $5.50 a 1,000 gallons.
Thank you. Whew. All right, so where are we? What's our next step based on all? This is a great discussion and really covering a lot of ground. Jane, please.
One of the things I would like to do, if, I don't know if it's possible, maybe Kristen, I don't know.
Uh-oh.
Could give a couple examples that we could have for our meeting, the hearing on Tuesday, to say, okay, for instance, this business is going to be paying X over the year, take these figures. And then to give a high and low of what these businesses can expect, so that people have a better idea other than looking at what we were presented. I mean, I've been swimming in figures for a couple of days now, trying to figure out what the differences were. And so maybe take a small business and a large restaurant and say, okay, this is what your new rates are gonna look like in reality if you use this much water. Is that
Let me
a
get-
possibility that we could have?
Candace,
yes.
let me get to Candace, then I'll get to you, John.
We can do that, Jane. We just can't identify specific businesses.
No, I know that. No, I mean, if you
But we
say,
could- we
okay,
could say,
we're
an
gonna
example
take
would
a
be-
small business that uses 3,000 gallons a month, say, and then compare it to, large restaurant or medium restaurant, I guess that's probably what most of them are. And they're using 50,000 gallons a month. This is what your bill is going to look like, so that we have some concrete numbers for people.
Yeah.
So they're not just looking at these
Sure.
charts here.
No, great suggestion. Thank you. Thanks, Candace. John, did you still have a question or comment? You're muted. You're muted, still. Still.
Okay, sorry.
There you go.
Okay, I'm on my phone, unfortunately, because my computer's not working. But anyway, so it's difficult to unmute. So I think it really doesn't matter what type of business, whether it's a small business, a big business, anybody can look at their bills. Candace has been providing bills where there are detailed information about how much they use every single month. And any businessman can look and say, okay, well, we're going to charge, this is our base rate, and this is the per gallon charge. And they're going to be able to figure it out under whatever scenario we're talking about. If we're, so it doesn't really matter whether it's a restaurant or a art gallery. They're all going to know that there's this dollar base rate and there's this dollar amount per 1,000 gallons. So it's very simple math.
Jane,
It is simple math in some respects, but how many of our businesses are going to sit down with what we were given and figure that out? I don't think too many of them are. And the way they're being billed now, I would just like an example. So say you have been billed in the past as a small business, you're paying $38 a month for X amount of, for however much water you're using. Now your bill is going to be this. And then take a medium restaurant. This is what your bill has been. And this is what you can look forward to if you're using 50,000 gallons of water a month. I would just like those as examples to give to the businesses in town so that they can have a concrete example of what their bills might look like.
We can-
Yeah, that's a reasonable request, I think. Yeah.
I think so, because how many businesses are looking at this right now and figuring out what their bill's gonna be? I don't
Yeah.
think too many.
No, I hear you. Candace, does that sound feasible from your perspective?
Yeah, we can do that. And, Chris
Great.
has come up with some numbers, but they're in a kind of a convoluted spreadsheet, so we can
Yeah.
simplify that.
Great.
And,
Dan, does that make sense to you as a next? step?
It does, with a couple of caveats. First of all, your water costs have been going up and will continue to go up. And so it is reasonable to expect that most businesses will pay more because this is a rate increase as well as it is a rate restructuring because you need the additional revenue in order to break even. Secondly, what businesses need to understand is that what they're paying right now is not reflective of what it costs the city to serve them. And so, yes, they will all fixate on the fact that that their prior bill was $50 a month and now their new bill is $75 a month, and that's unfair and unjust and unreasonable, et cetera, et cetera. But what they need to understand is that $50 a month was unreasonably low.
Yeah,
The town was losing money on the water service it was
Yeah.
providing to it. It was basically the town was subsidizing the business. And this
Yep.
is a means of getting rid of it.
Yep.
So
no, I
it
agree.
may
Dan.
be cold comfort to them.
Yeah,
But-
but I don't think realistically, and Jane, I would think that the businesses recognizing that we have infrastructure issues with pipes and sewer repair and what have you, that they are not going to expect their water bill to come down. They may expect it to go up. I don't think people, if it goes up $15, $20 a month, that's not going to break any business in this community, I believe. So I don't think they would be shocked if they see a slight increase in their water bill, particularly that for us to be able to maintain and improve our system. That's just my thought. Jane, yes, you have your hands up.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh, here she comes.
Now I forgot what I was gonna say. Um,
Welcome to my world.
That's what I get for listening to what you're saying, right?
Yeah, did it make sense? I hope so. I don't know.
Oh, I know what it was. One of the things I think people might wonder is how much is our shortfall? Can we give them a figure and say,
Yeah.
we're having to subsidize, and I know we've had this in
Good.
our budget.
Yeah,
We're subsidizing the water and sewer by, because
exactly.
I think that's a good question that we need to answer to the public.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's the thing. I think the businesses realistically think costs aren't going down in the world, right? You know what I mean? Things are going to cost a little more. We see that in all sorts of areas, but you're 100% right. I think that would be a good way if we can do that and get their buy-in. This is not punishment. This is helping them succeed, at the same time helping the town be able to do what we need to do to provide the safe and quality water and maintain the sewers. So at this point, Candace, Jane, where are we? What should we be doing prior to, now we have the meeting coming up. What more do we need to discuss or clarify today while we have Dan here and John and the council members, please?
I had a question and it's gone now, but the next meeting is, well, yeah, Jane, I understand. The next meeting is September 14th, where we have the public hearing, which has been advertised as needed. That public hearing, that meeting is going to be Zoom because we're back to that because of COVID right now.
Yes.
Under those circumstances, you may want to continue that hearing to a definitive date to give everybody the opportunity as much as possible to participate in that. We just have to adopt for the businesses, and that's all we're really talking about at the moment, a resolution by December 1st. So you could conceivably continue the hearing twice, to October and November if you needed to.
Yeah.
But when you do that, just be sure not to close the public hearing and just continue it to a date certain during the public hearing, and that we don't have to re-advertise. Is that accurate, Dan?
Yes, I believe so.
And we are talking about out-of-town users as well.
We could be,
Yes.
yeah. We haven't really talked much about that here yet.
No,
Yeah.
Great. So at this point, do we need to have any further discussion? Or are we all in agreement with that strategy? I think we're all in agreement with that approach. Not
So
hearing any
one-
objections.
I have a question for council. There were two scenarios that were presented to you, one with an 8,000 gallon minimum and one with no minimum. Does council have a preference at this point?
Sage, are you raising your hand or counting?
I'm raising my hand. For commercial, I think that we need to start at least at 8,000. I think 8,000 was the amount we were looking at for residents. I believe that commercial should be a little bit higher personally.
Thank you.
Dan, is that something you can work up for us between now and September 14th?
I mean, we already have an 8,000 gallon option
Right.
for wastewater, for commercial water.
Right. She's just saying she would like it to be a higher number, like, I don't know what, 10, 15,000, whatever.
On page 17 for non-residential, he gives a breakdown from all the way from 3,000 gallons to 50,000 gallons, and he does
Right.
have the 12,000 highlighted. And I think that might be a nice starting gallon number for a commercial business.
I can do a 12,000 gallon.
Okay,
Yeah.
Minimum.
Thanks, Sage. That's great. Thank you.
Now,
Thanks, Dan.
Okay.
Anything else for the good of the order? No, hearing none. Okay. Sage, can I count on you for a motion, please?
Motion to adjourn?
Is there a second, Alex?
I'll second.
Oh, Jane, thank you. There you go. That assertiveness training has really paid off. I love it. Oh, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
I.
Opposed, no. It is now 5:22 and we're adjourned. Thank you all very good. Dan, thank you so very,
you,
very
Dan.
much.
Thanks,
John,
everybody.
appreciate your participating as well.